Hello and welcome back. My name is Rosie.
And my name is Paul.
And this is
It's Sinister.
So Paul and I have decided to go back and re-record some of our original episodes where the audio quality maybe wasn't the best. But with that, we decided we may as well add video to it. And yeah, so we thought we'd upload a video.
So let's see how this goes.
We will see how this goes. We don't know how this will go. So we thought we'd test it out. But let's get on to the case.
Exciting.
So today we are discussing what I think would be the case that I am most invested in. And this is the case of Bryce Laspisa. So this is an unsolved case. He's technically a missing person, and I usually don't like unsolved cases, but I find this one absolutely fascinating. So I will walk you through all given information, and at the end we can discuss the conspiracy theories associated.
And where is this case from?
This is from America.
America again.
Yeah, but a US case. Now, before I do start, there is a variation in the information given across a range of sources, and some of it can be kind of contradicting at times with different people giving different information or differing recounts of events that occurred over the days before his disappearance.
So there's no leads to really go off of.
There's that, but then everyone has kind of
different
opinions and different versions of events. So there are time periods throughout this case that I don't have the definitive answer on. I don't actually know for a fact what kind of happened because different people said different things happened. And like plus or minus a little bit of camera footage we have, we don't really know. Everything's either from like parents or friends, and that's what we're going off.
And what year are we talking about?
This is 18.
Well, that's going to be a new enough case, though.
Yes, but what I will discuss is the information that I found in the most reports. So it seems the most valid with his family and friends. Just so we're clear, if people don't think different versions of events.
Like you think 2013 people with more technology, there should be more information out there.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. It is just tricky, and I guess people want to share different versions of what happened that kind of make them look better as well. It's a bit tricky. There is also an episode of Disappeared on this case, which I've seen clips on and it looks really good. I cannot get it in either Australia or in Ireland, so I don't have those. All the information from that I don't have, but this is a really interesting case, and that is something that you can go and look at if you live in America.
Well, we can't get that information here.
No, I can only get little clips, but it was those little clips that I did see were like information I couldn't find anywhere else. But let's get on to the case of Bryce Laspisa. So Bryce was born on April 30th, 1994 in Illinois and was the only child of parents Karen and Michael Laspisa. His family have reported that they were a close-knit family that spent a lot of time together when Bryce was growing up. The family lived in Naperville up until Bryce decided to move to Rocklin, California to study at Sierra College. Some sources said that around this time, Karen and Michael were retiring and decided to move to Laguna Niguel to be closer to Bryce. Other sources say they were already planning on moving there. Either way, they retired and moved to Laguna Niguel, which is still about 7 hours from Rocklin, where Bryce was going to college. Now here I feel like some sources do try and make Karen and Michael seem like the more overbearing and controlling parents because it kind of suits the narrative or like some of the theories that will come into play later. I am not saying I think they were the perfect parents. A lot will happen. However, I think the media tries to vilify them a little bit, and I don't think that's fair either.
Just because they moved closer to his college.
There's a lot of other things too, but they do try and really force this overbearing parent situation.
They were buying their retirement villa, you say, their retirement home.
Yeah.
But just because they were going close to his college doesn't mean he was going to spend his college time there.
Well, yeah, but also too, that's still 7 hours away. Who's driving 7 hours to go see their parents every weekend or something like that? That's not happening either.
Yeah, we can't talk.
Why?
We're a lot closer.
You are.
Yes, right.
So one of the theories on the disappearance is that he changed his identity to get away and didn't want anything to do with his family anymore, which could be true, and we will get into that later on. But I feel like, again, they would move a lot closer than 7 hours if they were trying to have a close eye on their son. So Bryce was described as a very friendly, cheerful person who was charismatic and made friends easy. By all accounts, he did well in school, maintained decent grades. He was athletic and enjoyed playing both football and baseball. He was also a very talented artist and was actually studying graphic and industrial design at Sierra College at the time of his disappearance.
So he was sporting and brainy.
Yeah, I'd say he was more like physical work he liked, and he liked the artistic side of things more than like textbook side. Bryce got through his first year of college receiving good grades for his classes and having formed some really close friendships with Sean Dixon, who would become his roommate when they both returned for their second year, and Kim Sly, who became Bryce's girlfriend. For future reference, it was reported that Bryce tried to spend as much of his time with Kim and deeply cared about her, so it seemed like they had a very close relationship, and he cared a lot about her. Over the break between Bryce's first and second year, he lived with his parents in their home in Laguna Niguel. During this time, he told family and friends that he was excited and eager to return to college and resume his classes. By all accounts, he appeared happy and normal during this time. 2 weeks before Bryce's second year began, his parents helped him move into his apartment in... 2 weeks before Bryce's second year began, his parents helped him move into his apartment in Rockland that he was sharing with Sean. This apartment was about 90 minutes away from where Kim lived in Chico, and Kim and Bryce were trying to spend a lot of time together during this period. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary with Bryce until the 2 weeks leading up to his disappearance, when Sean stated he started drinking alcohol daily and taking the ADHD medication Vyvanse, which he was not prescribed. Bryce was 19 at this time, and I feel like to an extent it could be attributed to him being 19 and having just spent the summer with his parents and things like that.
It was probably just living college life.
Yeah, like in a sense you kind of, yeah.
Drink, drugs, bit of party life.
Yeah, and given he'd just spent so much time with his parents, maybe they didn't want him drinking, given that legal age of drinking in America is 21. He might have just been excited to be living with a friend and getting his first sense of freedom without parental guidance. And that's not to say that taking unprescribed medication is ever a good idea, but teenagers do tend to want to explore. I guess I also see it as being possible that he could have been using alcohol and drugs as a potential coping mechanism, or him having an alcohol dependency problem given the extent at which it was being used.
But he was only 19.
He was only 19.
How long was he drinking?
I don't know.
Probably a month or two.
I'd say he started early based on a few different accounts. But yeah, again, we're going off information from family and friends, and we're not going off information from Bryce. Either way.
Like he's going from being a sporting fella to being an alcoholic. And sure, you're saying dependency on alcohol. Like, why was he dependent on it?
It's more the fact that events will happen in the next couple of days that kind of indicate his mental health wasn't great. So perhaps my train of thought was kind of maybe there was a bit of like that dependency in a sense because something wasn't going well with him, who's kind of using it as a bit of a coping mechanism. That's just speculation. I don't know. Either way, his friends and family were concerned about his actions during this time. The Vyvanse was supposedly used to keep Bryce awake so he could play video games throughout the night. Vyvanse can be used for this. I remember an episode of SVU and Sarah Hyland was in it and she killed one of her classmates while either on Vyvanse or a similar ADHD stimulant because she hadn't slept in like a week while she was like staying up trying to study. So it can be used to stop you from sleeping and things like that.
It is in your head.
Absolutely. Not sleeping is already not good for the body and brain and super dangerous, but Vyvanse is actually an S8 medication anyway. I don't know if S8 is worldwide, but in Australia it's the term used. It's a Schedule 8 medication or drug of addiction, basically, with a much higher, like a much more strict legislative control due to the high potential for misuse and dependency. So even in my old work, if someone I was working with was prescribed an S8, like Vyvanse, the paperwork that we had to go through was crazy. It had to be marked with 2 different signatures every single shift, changeover, everything like that, just because the side effects are so extreme and they can be absolutely detrimental to your health. And there are side effects of Vyvanse that can be directly related to this case. So some side effects that potentially Bryce could have been experiencing during this time are trouble sleeping, rapid mood changes, agitation, confusion, loss of interest or pleasure, hallucinations, red irritated eyes, as well as dysphoria, euphoria, psychosis, and paranoia, which I could not think of a worse combination of side effects, to be honest.
And he was going through them all.
We don't know if he was going through any of them really. He might not have even experienced any of them, but given some of the events that happened, there is a chance that any of those could have been affecting him at the time. So let me get into the timeline of events that started on Monday the 26th of August, 2013. So on this day, after 2 weeks of partying, Bryce's second year at Sierra College commenced. He attended his classes as normal. The events of this day have been the most difficult to come to a definitive conclusion on, as, again, sources have varied so drastically. But going off as many interviews as I could find, this is what appears to be the most reliable rendition of what occurred. So Kim said, quote, "He was acting strange and he admitted he took that pill." I believe this is referring to the Vyvanse. As I mentioned some of the effects prior, it is possible that Bryce was experiencing some of them at the time. Also to add, the combination of Vyvanse and alcohol doesn't have any official warning to state it's dangerous, like a dangerous combination, or it leads to any higher risk than taking Vyvanse on its own, unprescribed, things like that. But I think that's more so because no one's actually studying people taking Vyvanse and alcohol.
I just suppose it's the same as any drugs, so you're not supposed to mix with alcohol, because...
Exactly. Polydrug use is bad, and alcohol is a drug. But yeah, no actual studies. There is a risk of alcohol poisoning, which I found out from Dylan, actually, where, like, alcohol... I don't know how to explain it, but it, like, times the Vyvanse or, like, ADHD stimulant in your system, so it's, like, times by 4 or something like that. I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, just a bigger kick off itself.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, no, there is no actual scientific proof that the combination poses any psychological threat. Not to say it doesn't, just that there's no found proof of risk. Anyway, moving on, Bryce's behaviour grew more concerning, where he had given away some of his belongings to Sean. Of these items included his Xbox, which he loved and was medicating himself to stay up and play, and a pair of diamond stud earrings that his mother had given him. Bryce also sent Sean a text saying, quote, "I love you, bro, seriously. You're the best person I've ever met. You saved my soul." That message does kinda concern me. It kind of sounds like a goodbye message in a sense. However, it's more Sean's response that makes me feel that way. So Sean actually replied to that message, quote, "I love you too, man. You have an amazing life full of love and blessings. Don't waste that. You have too many people who love you, Bryce." Which does sound to me like Sean was already concerned about Bryce's behaviour. I know if I received a kind of message of someone being like, "I love you, rah, rah, rah," I'd be like, "Oh, you're so sweet." Like, I wouldn't be concerned like about their mental health or anything like that. It would be like I feel like there would already have to be signs of like a deteriorating mental health for me to see that as a goodbye message. I think that was more so what was concerning Sean anyway. So was it just that Bryce had given him some belongings and the drinking, or was it something else? I don't know. Regardless, he obviously was concerned.
It was a note of character text to send.
Yeah, and I think Sean obviously saw Bryce as being at risk to himself in some sense. So then later that night, Bryce texted Kim a message stating that she would be better off without him. Kim asked if Bryce was breaking up with her, and he just responded, yes. Now, going back to the claims that Bryce always wanted to be around her and cared about her so much, that doesn't really feel right. But again, those claims were coming from people who wanted, it's different perspectives and things like that.
They weren't just involved in the case.
That, and like also, it could have been from people wanting Kim to look like a very good girlfriend and things like that. And that's not to say she wasn't. It's just, I feel like when someone disappears, everyone does want to try and indicate that they were very good and they didn't have any involvement in that. And that's not to say anyone could have, but it's just what it kind of seems like happens.
They just want to look like the good people. We've done what we could. And
yeah. Also, too, anything could have happened in the days leading up to this that could have left Bryce wanting to break off a relationship, really. Regardless.
Which like that wouldn't be out of character, like say going to college to break up with a girl or...
No. But it feels like a very cold message, too. So Kim and Sean actually discussed their concerns and planned on calling Karen the following day to discuss them with her, like Karen is Bryce's mum. Then on Wednesday the 28th, Sean called Karen and discussed Bryce acting out of character, drinking excessively, and that he had broken up with Kim quite suddenly the night before. Sean also told Karen that Bryce had indicated that something was troubling him, but Bryce wasn't telling anyone what that was. Apparently Karen wasn't alarmed by this, and she kind of just... whatever.
Just shrugged it off.
She did shrug it off. There are numerous takes on this, and Karen will continue to not be alarmed by things as this does progress. It's hard to know how you'd act yourself in a similar situation. I know Karen has received a lot of backlash over the way she reacted to a lot of this. It mightn't seem like a lot to be concerned with now, but I just think when it comes to uni and your friends and things, imagine the things your friends hide from your parents, the bad behaviour, the behavioural things you do, and like your friends will hide it. They're not going to go snitching on you, telling your parents that you're drinking, doing drugs, all this stuff. Imagine how concerned a friend has to be to go to your parents.
Look, depends what kind of weird friends you have.
I guess that's true.
If they were just dry shites, didn't do drink, didn't do drugs, really good A students in college.
Yeah.
Like
You
you're
do.
going to get different types of students. Like
You do. I didn't get the indication that Sean or Kim were those type of people, though. I feel like they kind of seem like the type to party on, not a bother. Regardless, who knows? I don't know. Again. But yeah, I'm not pointing the blame at Karen. It's just, I don't know how I'd react, and different families do have different dynamics and things like that.
yeah, look, maybe Karen went to college herself and
Experimented and
dwindled in the old bit of smoky and the drinky and just lived the college life.
of course, and so you should like definitely live and explore and things like that. It's just, yeah, she had no concern and that's fine. So at 10 p.m. that night, Bryce went to Kim's house to tell her again that he wanted to end their relationship. It's not really known why he went there in person after sending that text to her, though. He went there and he still wasn't giving her a reason to the breakup. While there, Kim said that Bryce looked agitated and unwell. Kim took his car keys from him so he couldn't drive, as she was concerned about the state he was in, and she asked him to have a nap before driving back home, remembering that this is about a 90-minute drive away. So this frustrated Bryce, and he called Karen to intervene. Karen offered to fly out the following day and help him, but Bryce declined, saying, "Don't make any flight reservations until I talk to you, because I have a lot to talk to you about." But when asked, Bryce wouldn't explain what this was. Kim then spoke to Karen and explained that Bryce wasn't acting like himself and that she didn't feel like he should be driving. Bryce told Karen that Kim was just upset because he had dumped her, and told his mum not to worry. I get that. That kind of makes sense, but also too, she was kind of just saying, have a nap. Go have a nap and then you can drive home.
But like, why was she being so nice and she was just kind of being dumped?
That's what I think too.
You would think, get out my fucking apartment or house or door or whatever.
I don't know, it sounds like she really cared about him.
Lie down there for an hour and a half.
I wouldn't go have a little nap before you drive. If you don't look well, I'd be like, leave. But anyway, Karen asked Kim to return his keys as long as Bryce promised to go home, get some sleep, and call her, as in Karen, back in the morning, which Bryce agreed to do. Karen stated, quote, "I, as his mum, didn't get the sense that he was distraught over what he was doing. Bryce didn't seem heartbroken." Which, that's whatever. There is also a website called Web Sleuths, which is like a public forum, but there are verified insiders who have been proven to be linked to the case. I found one post by a user named Karen, but it's Caron, who is a verified insider on Web Sleuths for this case. And I found a post by them that actually said Karen, Bryce's mother, spoke to Kim's roommate, who told Karen that Bryce looked okay to drive, and the roommate was the one to give Bryce back his keys. Again, I'm not.
This is Kim's roommate.
Yeah. Now, in terms of getting other information from Web Sleuths, there is so much information. There is pages and pages and pages. It was way too difficult going through everything to try and find verified insiders and things like that. Like things that were genuinely good and related to this case, because there's just way too much random gibberish on top of it. So there wasn't a lot more that I used in terms of research for this case. But I do find this part tricky because on one hand, had Kim kept the keys a little while, maybe this story would have ended differently. But I get like fair if Karen's there thinking like she's just taken her keys, she's upset that she's been broken up with. You know, maybe he's not heartbroken. But the thing is, Kim knew he was taking drugs and drink. And Karen had been told too, and she was just kind of ignoring this. And this is now the second call within like 24 hours about her son that Karen does ignore. So it is a bit tricky, but it's not my place to judge. I don't really want to be hounding a woman who probably has to live with these decisions for the rest of her life.
But who's actually saying these phone calls were made?
There's numerous, like, Karen said they were made, Kim said they were made.
Karen's actually...
Everyone's agreeing that they were made.
All right.
Yeah, so it's not like everyone's saying they were made and Karen's like, no, they were never made. I never got those phone calls. You know,
she's only up that she got.
100%. Also, too, she could just be in denial about the state of her son's mental health, really. Like, she would go, like, people want to deny things like that, too, if his mental health is deteriorating.
Well, so not really. It's an only child.
Yeah.
That she would be doing everything to protect
There
her.
is that aspect as well. It's just, we don't know. Family dynamics, it's very tricky to tell what you would do in that situation, I suppose. However, I do feel like in saying that, Bryce's parents were given a lot of chances to intervene in the following days, and they just kind of don't. So Bryce left Kim's house around 11 p.m, which is 1.5 hours after he reportedly arrived, and he only was there to reiterate the breakup and nothing more. Apparently, that's the only story we've gotten off Kim and things like that.
Yeah, because don't make sense making that journey for an hour and a half.
No.
After already sending you a text.
Yeah. And also, to still not give answers, it just doesn't really make sense.
No.
But anyway, everyone believed he was going back to his place in Rockland to get some sleep. So then on Thursday the 29th at 1 a.m, Karen received a phone call from Bryce, but she missed it. She saw the call later in the morning and assumed it was to let her know that he had arrived home safely. Phone records show that Bryce was an hour away from his apartment in an isolated area at the time he made the phone call. Then at 11 a.m, Bryce's parents received a voicemail. I believe it was an automatic message from roadside assistance. And this was saying that Bryce had used their roadside assistance account at 9 a.m. They tried calling Bryce, but he didn't answer at this time, and his phone was forwarding all calls to his voicemail. Karen called Sean to check on Bryce, but Sean told them he never returned home the night before. Karen and Michael checked their credit card statement to see if Bryce had used it, and they saw a charge from a company called Castro Tire and Gas in Buttonwillow, which had been made that morning. So what had happened was Bryce ran out of gas near the Buttonwillow rest area and needed some delivered. A man named Christian, who worked at Castro Tire and Gas, delivered it. Now, remember Christian going forward. Due to Buttonwillow being less than a 3-hour drive from their home in Laguna Niguel, Karen and Michael believed that Bryce was on his way to see them to discuss in person whatever it was he'd been talking about the previous night. Hours after the gas had been delivered, Bryce still hadn't arrived at his parents' and he wasn't answering any of their phone calls. So his parents called Castro Tire and Gas and they spoke with Christian, who said he'd go back to the rest area and check for Bryce, which is a super nice thing to do. And it had been hours since he initially delivered the gas. So the odds of Bryce still being there did seem a little bit unlikely. But he returned to the area and Bryce was still sat inside his car at the Buttonwillow rest area. And asked Bryce what he was doing and Bryce replied, nothing. Christian called Karen and explained Bryce looked okay. His eyes looked a little red, but seemed fine otherwise. It could be that he was tired and sleep deprived, or it could be the Vyvanse, it could be something else altogether. There are numerous reasons for that. Then around 12:30, Bryce finally answered his mother's calls and told her he was on his way home. After the phone call, his parents expected him to arrive at their home by 3 p.m. But 3 p.m. came and he still wasn't home. And Bryce was not answering their phone calls. And it wasn't until 2 p.m. that they decided to track his phone, which is something they'd apparently been able to do the entire time. Yeah. But while tracking his phone, they discovered he'd moved 8 miles, which is about 13 kilometres, in that entire time period, and he was still in this small town of Buttonwillow. So at this point, he'd been in Buttonwillow for at least 9 hours. I think I personally would be a little bit more alarmed. That's odd. Odd behaviour.
Yeah, I suppose like he likes you. Like he'd full tank of gas.
Yeah.
He'd full access to his parents' credit cards, so he...
Yeah. And I think, they can track him. I personally, at this time, I would just go to them. They can track his phone, so if he moves, they can find, wherever he's gone to. He's only about 2.5 to 3 hours away at this point. But instead, Karen and Michael waited until 9 p.m. to call the police, which was nearly 24 hours after he left Kim's to go on what should have been about an 8-hour drive from Chico to Laguna Niguel. So his parents asked Highway Patrol for help locating Bryce. Officers tracked his phone and found Bryce sitting in his car in a car park in Buttonwillow. Still, officers spent 20 minutes with Bryce searching his car for drugs and alcohol but found nothing, and then performed a sobriety test that he passed. Officers said Bryce was friendly and responsive throughout their interaction. They asked Bryce to call his parents and let them know he was fine, but Bryce was reluctant to do so. I do think it's interesting that he's alone all day in this car with nothing better to do than really answer a phone call, or he's sat there alone doing nothing. Every time he's found, he's alone, and he still doesn't answer phone calls from his parents. I do think that's a little bit telling.
Well, especially when he's told me that he had so much to talk to him about.
That, and also it kind of gives me the impression that perhaps they weren't as close-knit a family as they kind of try and portray. Anyway, police ended up dialing Karen's number and they held out the phone for Bryce to talk to. Karen told Bryce to come home and Bryce told her he would be seeing some friends later. Bryce appeared sober and made the phone call, so police sent him on his way. That was all they could really do. Then at 11 p.m, Bryce stopped at a gas station in Buttonwillow to buy a drink. So at this point, he has been in Buttonwillow for at least 14 hours. No explanation as to why. Again, his parents called roadside assistance and Christian found Bryce again in the same place he was found by police hours earlier.
This Christian must be getting shit sick of Bryce now at this stage, is he?
What a good human, just a good person to be like, you're worried about your son, I'll go look for him. I'll go see if he's still in the same place.
But they would have been there 10 times over.
Yeah.
Themselves if they headed out, it's only a couple of hours away.
It is. He was in the same spot for 14 hours. They could have gotten there numerous times over. Anyway, so Christian called Karen and said that Bryce was still in Buttonwillow and that he'd follow Bryce onto the interstate to make sure that he was headed in the direction towards his parents' home. After doing that, Christian called Karen again to inform her Bryce was on the I-5 headed to Laguna Niguel and there was nothing odd about his driving. Bryce then called Karen and said, according to his GPS, he would arrive in Laguna Niguel on Friday the 30th at 1:50 a.m. Bryce called Karen again to tell her he'd detoured off the I-5 but was getting back on to drive home. At 2:08, he called his mum again and said he'd pulled over in a suburban area and would sleep in his car. Karen thought Bryce had been awake for almost 48 hours by this point and didn't argue with the decision. This was Karen's last ever interaction with Bryce. Bryce hadn't pulled over and he'd actually continued driving for about 90 minutes to Castaic Lake, which was about 2 hours away from his family home. CCTV footage of Lake Hughes Road near Castaic Lake captured Bryce's car going up the road at 2:15 a.m. and Bryce took the exit to Castaic Lake. Hours later, at 4:29 a.m, the same camera captured Bryce driving up the road and taking the Castaic Lake exit again. At 5:30 a.m, police officers arrived at Castaic Lake for some training, and that's when they came across Bryce's wrecked car. The car had been found overturned and wrecked on an access road leading to Castaic Lake Recreation Area. The car had gone down a 25-foot embankment, which is about 7.5 meters, and there it flipped on its side. The car wreck is estimated to have happened between 4:30 a.m. and 5 a.m, and there was a small amount of blood on the passenger side headrest and in the back seat, but there was no Bryce. The back window of the car had been removed, which indicated to detectives that someone had left the car through the back window, so been smashed out from the inside. But weirdly enough, Bryce's belongings were still in the car, including his laptop, phone and wallet. And there was a duffel bag in the trunk of the car that was unzipped, so detectives thought Bryce might have removed something before leaving the car. But only one thing and not the entire bag. At the top of the embankment, there were tyre tracks from Bryce's car that led down to the lake. The track patterns indicated that there was speed involved and no effort made to use the brakes. Apparently, from the top of the embankment, it looks as if the lake's directly in front, if that makes sense. So it's embankment lake kind of thing. So there is a chance that Bryce was driving thinking he would go directly into the lake, perhaps in an attempt to take his own life. So at 8 a.m, law enforcement arrived at Karen and Michael's home to inform them of the discovery. Search parties proceeded immediately. Divers searched the lake, but there was no trace of Bryce. Volunteers searched nearby campgrounds and other areas where Bryce might have been seeking shelter. Officers searched the area near the wreck for weeks. Then, on September 4th, a jogger found a burnt body near the wreck site, and it was initially thought to potentially be Bryce, as at the time the body was too burnt to even determine if it was a man or a woman, let alone if it could have been Bryce. His family and friends had to wait for the coroner's report to determine if this was Bryce. So during the waiting period, Sean said in an interview, "I'm not worried because I know that though he may be having some issues right now, I can't see him doing that to himself. I just have hope that that's not him." And then the coroner's report came back and it wasn't Bryce. It was actually the body of a man named Lamondre Dion Miles, who unfortunately lost his life in that area. So detectives brought bloodhounds in and tracked Bryce's scent to a nearby truck stop on Castaic Road, where his scent suddenly vanished, giving detectives the impression that Bryce may have either gotten into the vehicle with someone or potentially kidnapped. But after 3 weeks, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office called off the search for Bryce. Following the search being called off, Bryce's family hired a private investigator named Shannon Toulos. Shannon believed that given Bryce's physical condition, it was unlikely he sustained a debilitating injury in the car wreck and likely walked away from the scene on his own.
But they'd hire a private detective, but they won't drive 3 hours.
To find him while he's still around.
And he was there like
14
hours.
Yeah.
I
know. In the years since his disappearance, the Laspisa family have continued to regularly search the area where his car was found. In 2015, they hired a sonar boat and searched the lake for 2 days. Their private investigator also worked with a drone operator, and unfortunately, nothing was ever found. No further information has since come out regarding Bryce's mysterious disappearance. I did find that his family apparently turned to psychics for help. So again, they were looking for anything. They were desperate. Like I've got to give it to them. They were desperate. They wanted answers. I guess when you are desperate, you will do anything. But I would say there are a lot of shitty people who are willing to pretend to be psychics in order to benefit off grieving families. And that's where I get it's just a shitty situation. So apparently one psychic sent in this tip stating, quote, "The only thing I am seeing is that Bryce is either in or around the lake. I looked it up on Google Maps and it looks like a V-shaped lake."
Would you not look into her crystal ball?
Oh no, she looked Google Maps.
Google Maps.
Yeah.
Oh, she's a psychic. Oh,
psychic.
And what did she do for Google Maps when she was a psychic or her?
Who knows, before Google Maps. I don't know what area his car turned over after looking at the Facebook pages, but I am drawn to the top right hand point of the V. I don't know if he is alive or not, but I am sensing if the search keeps persistent, then it is likely he will be found in one shape or another. It looks like there is a lot of dirt around him and trees. It might seem a little generic, but the visual looks like someone is sitting in the dirt with a lot of greenery around, and it looks like 3 trees right around him, 1 on his right-hand side and 2 in front. Also sensing some dampness, so maybe he got rained on or something along with the dirt. Other than that, I am not getting much. If I get anything else, I'll be sure to let you know. Facebook, Google Maps, weather reports, yeah. I don't think you can get much more generic than that. It's a V-shaped lake. You look at that, you see that. You see a weather report, it rained. It's a lake surrounded by trees and dirt. If he was in that area, he would be surrounded by trees and dirt.
And you don't need a crystal ball for this thing.
It's terrible. However, I think that tip did give Karen hope as she posted on Facebook, and that's how I found it. So it's just very sad to me. I know that Karen has since said that multiple psychic, clairvoyants and mediums have sent their visions of Bryce to the family. Not any of them have been accurate with police findings. So it's just random people. They've all varied from Bryce being alive to him having passed away. I think it's just a very shocking people trying to make money out of a disappearance, and it's very sad. Now, onto the theories. The theories are they're endless. There are so many possibilities, and there's no actual indication of what happened after the car wreck. But we'll discuss the most popular theories, and then we'll see what your thoughts are. Actually, do you have any theories now?
I don't know. Did he do a legger?
Did he do a legger? There's no evidence that he's gone.
Well, I don't know. It seems that he could have been in for a big windfall. Why would he want to run away
I don't know. I'm actually not sure. Look, I find this very tricky. Now, there are a few theories. There is speculation that he had been waiting around for a drug dealer that day and eventually got the drugs and crashed due to them being in his system. Not that he actually wanted to commit suicide. And I just think that no one's waiting that long for a drug deal, and that one can be kind of debunked. No one's waiting 14 hours in a truck stop for Vyvanse. Some believe he was being followed and called roadside assistance to have eyes on him. This one doesn't make sense to me because I believe if I was being followed, I would not stop driving.
You wouldn't stay in the same spot for 14 hours, no?
No, because it's plenty of time for them to come and get you. And then, since the scent stopped at a truck stop, people believe he may have been picked up by a dangerous truck driver and was met with foul play. But it's been over 10 years and still no body has been found. Now, people wondered if he'd witnessed the death of Lamondre Dion Miles, who was the man that was set alight, unfortunately, subsequently murdered. They thought maybe he was he was a witness to the crime. They didn't want to leave a witness. But again, there was no body. Surely it would have been done the exact same way.
Yep.
You would think there would be two burnt bodies next to each other kind of thing. So the first bigger theory that I think holds a little bit more weight is that Bryce was struggling with his mental health or was suffering with a type of psychosis from the Vyvanse. This suggests that Bryce had a brain fog and was getting confused, thus making him make decisions he wouldn't in his usual mindset. This may have led to an attempted suicide or just general confusion that led him elsewhere. And it could possibly be the case that Bryce knew something that he wasn't supposed to or that was dangerous. He'd mentioned a few times to people that something was bothering him, but not what that was. And he even said to his mum that he wanted to talk to her in person, but no further information was provided to this. Plus, given his odd behaviour and his what appeared to be a sudden dependence on alcohol and other substances, it kind of might be an indication of some type of stress. I do really want to know what he wanted to talk to his mum about. That interests me. I want to know what he said to Sean was bothering him. All these things. I feel like this could possibly solve the whole case, but no one knows.
But sure, if that was spoke about, there wouldn't be a case.
That is true too. But going off this theory, he faked his death and is now living off the grid, and either cannot or doesn't want to get in touch with anyone. He mentioned to Karen that he was hanging out with friends later. Was there someone coming to pick him up and help him disappear? What was going on there? And given that his scent did just disappear at the truck stop, maybe that's where he had someone come and pick him up.
And why did he want to disappear?
Well, I guess maybe he was scared of something or someone. I don't know.
Yeah. He spent 14 hours in one place and everyone knew where he was.
Yeah, but was that maybe he just knew his parents wouldn't come? Was that while he was organising this friend to come and pick him up? Who knows? It's very confusing. I don't have an answer to anything.
So he decides to crash the car first off a cliff.
It's very strange. Who knows? I do feel like this kind of also, indicates him sitting around a bit more. I don't think I can find another explanation to why he would have been sitting around other than he was there waiting for someone. I don't know. It's tricky. Look, it is tricky. There's no real explanation to any of this.
But if he was waiting around for someone, or if he was waiting for drugs, or if he was... Wouldn't this all be on his phone? So his phone was left at the scene.
His phone was left on the scene and there was nothing. But I guess that's how they know, Sean's messages and things like that. And
but they would have known if there was other messages of friends.
Yeah.
Was there any recognition of this in his phone?
There's nothing stated about any communication about disappearing, drugs, anything.
Or his laptop. So
they had all of it. He left it all there. Nothing.
It's like it couldn't have been waiting for a drug deal.
You would think, no. I would think no.
Anything if he was having communication, it's either through his laptop or his phone.
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah, but it's crazy case that there is no information. Now, Bryce's dental records, DNA, and fingerprints have all been entered into the National Missing and Unidentified Person System and other similar databases, but to this day there has not been a match. My take on this, though, is that he shows a lot of signs of thinking his life is coming to an end. From working in mental health, I had to know a lot of signs that someone is thinking about ending their life, and he does exhibit multiple. Maybe he's smart and he just wanted people to think that so that he could disappear, but there were just a lot of signs leading up to this in the last few days.
I don't know, it's you're just going from signs or from statements from his
statements of
friends and family, so.
And that's exactly it.
They're not saying signs,
No. But there is a theory that he did attempt to take his own life. So Bryce had unstable behaviour leading up to his disappearance. He'd broken up with his girlfriend as if he wanted to start closing ties in his life. There was a lot of reckless drinking and substance use. Also, it's only the alcohol and the violence that we know of. Who knows? And then giving away special belongings. He didn't appear to be sleeping much, and he was not wanting to talk to family on the phone. And then there was the sudden messages he sent Sean telling he loved him. Everyone is so different and they act differently when planning to do something such as take your own life. But commonly, people will distance themselves from their loved ones. Obviously, like in a sense, maybe thinking it would make it easier on them. Regardless.
It is, but like the majority of suicide, they want to be found.
Yeah.
Dead or alive. Like they're not going to go out to a deserted
spot
lake and they normally do it close to home.
Yeah.
Where they can be found.
It's tricky. I know it's tricky. But I think statistically, people are more likely to act recklessly, increase substance abuse, be agitated, and have trouble sleeping leading up to doing something like that. Again, this is a generalization and everyone is different, but he was demonstrating these signs. The message to Sean could also be seen as an attempt to say goodbye. There was proof that he sped up off that embankment with no attempt of using the brakes. He didn't know how deep that was. There are a lot of indications.
Because he came out the back window and...
I know. But people believe he spent time waiting around to actually do it, like trying to get the courage to do it, and making sure that that was actually the decision he wanted to do.
Speculation.
This could be so far off the truth. That all being said, he wasn't in the car and he has not since been found. So maybe if he did attempt it, he realised while doing it that he didn't want to die, which is very common for people that do attempt it to be thankful that they survived. Bryce also expressed being excited about things in his future, which isn't common in people who want to take their own lives, because why would you plan for a future you don't plan on having? Again, it may have been a show put on for others, or I could be so far off with this theory. And there is also the chance that wanting to commit suicide was a negative side effect from the Vyvanse. Like he was just experiencing a symptom like depression and paranoia, and it was actually a last-minute decision from the few days prior to his car being found off the embankment. It's very hard to tell. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think it's all speculation.
All speculation. Bryce's family have said that they don't believe he would ever commit suicide. They also don't believe he's voluntarily missing, as they don't think he could have flown under the radar for this long and he would have reached out to someone eventually. They seem to think he was met with foul play. I believe it was also his parents who speculated he may have attained a head injury from the car accident that's left him unaware of who he is and potentially living amongst the homeless community, as he wouldn't have had any of his identifying documents. I know, there's a lot.
Yeah, look.
I know. Everything's just speculation because there's nothing to go off. There have actually been tips that have come in from people that have found men living in homeless communities that they believed look like Bryce. But interestingly, police have now come forward and changed Bryce's status to voluntarily missing instead of missing person, although all missing persons profiles on him appear to still be up. The reason on them changing the status hasn't been publicly disclosed, but it kind of gives me the indication that they have come in contact with Bryce and he's choosing to stay away. That's the impression that I get. Now, Sean made the comment in 2013, shortly after Bryce's disappearance, that he believes in his heart that Bryce is okay. He said, quote, "I think that he's trying to find himself right now. He doesn't want to be found." Sean actually left Bryce's high-top shoes next to the front door and said that Bryce can move them himself when he comes home. Days later, though, Sean kind of changed his plea and made the plea, "Bryce, come home, man. We all miss you. Family is the most important thing right now." And there was also a post made on Reddit, which was supposedly made by a high school friend of Bryce's. And I have no idea if it's a valid source, and this post did take me a lot of digging to find, but it kind of gives a different light to the situation. So it reads, quote, "I can say with certainty that there were issues between Bryce and his family. While Bryce's mother, Karen, is an unrepentant psycho, I am told that Bryce had a tight, borderline, codependent relationship with her in the years leading up to his disappearance. but not much is known about their relationship in the final year or so. His relationship with his father Mike was at times very tumultuous, as Mike would lose his temper, yell and scream at Bryce over things as trivial as not understanding how to complete his maths homework. I don't know if the relationship was ever physically violent, but there was most definitely a lot of verbal/emotional abuse going on in that household, and not just with Bryce. The latter part of Bryce's teen years were marred by a few incidents, such as getting busted with MDMA, as well as a lot of underage drinking issues that have gone largely unreported, all of which served to soil his familial ties. As I understand, Bryce was well on his way to becoming a teenaged alcoholic. He was apparently known for taking booze to high school and spending some school days maintaining a desired level of intoxication. It's very safe to assume that this behaviour continued to spiral out, evidenced by his taste for Adderall and other scripts. And he suffered a psychotic break from it, evidenced by his friends calling his mother with their concerns. It must have been some pretty disturbing behaviour in order for kids who all use drugs recreationally to contact their friends' parents with concerns about his mental state. When Bryce left home to attend community college, he did not do so by his own motivation. Karen and Mike shopped around for what school he would attend, gave him no decision in the matter, and shipped him out when the school year began. The decision was in part based on the availability by dormitories, as they wanted Bryce out of the home as soon as possible, which seems in keeping of what I know to be true of their parenting. They sent him to Sierra College in Rocklin, California, which is a 460-mile drive from his parents' home in Laguna Niguel. Mike and Karen were both very controlling parents, the type that foster harsh, rebellious behaviour from their kids. They sought to control every aspect of his life and used their money to do so. Bryce owned literally nothing of his own and was frequently reminded of it when he stepped out of line. To me, his actions were a great big fuck you to his manipulative, controlling, abusive parents. What better way to let them know you're done than by intentionally wrecking their car and leaving behind all their encounterments they paid for with their money and leveraged as a means of control. Sorry, I know this is a long one. It's still going. The time he spent in that small rural town was most likely waiting on someone to give him a ride. I believe the big story he wanted to tell his parents was that he would be dropping out of school and moving elsewhere. I believe he wanted to say it to their faces, but chickened out and decided that he was just going to move on. I believe his family knows this and have used the media, his friends and so on to wage a pressure campaign against him. I believe the police have encountered him at some point and have respected a request for silence, thus leading them to their conclusion that he is, quote, voluntarily missing. Now, sorry, that was so long, that is over. Who knows? We don't know if that is even a valid source or anything, but it's just like a long quote that kind of is very interesting.
Kind of, I think it's like if this person knew so much, why wasn't it?
Yeah.
I know. Never mentioned in any part of the...
No, it is. It's tricky. But no, that is absolutely everything I know on Bryce Laspisa. We would love to know your thoughts and theories on everything. Do you have any theories that you believe?
Yeah, maybe. Look, he wanted to get away from his family. Maybe he's suicide. Maybe it could be bears could beat him.
Okay.
What?
I'm not doing that.
There's bears in California.
Okay, we're not doing that. I think he's missing by his own choice. I think he's voluntarily missing. Police know that. That's why they changed the status.
I bet you bears.
I don't think it's bears. Oh, I'm not actually.
Right.
No, I'm not entertaining this.
It's a possibility.
Anyway, I personally think he's missing by his own choice. I think he did want to get away, and that's okay.
Because bears do hang around lakes.
Bears do hang around lakes. I don't know anything about bears. I don't personally think he was eaten by bears, but yeah. Thanks, Paul, for your insight. No, but we would love to know your input. Any theories that you have would be greatly appreciated. I'm obsessed with this case. It's one of those things I want an answer one day. I think it's the most fascinating case. There's just nothing really to go off.
I suppose basically, if there's a body going to turn up, or is there a live Bryce running around out there?
Yeah, well, I suppose, my theory is that police can't change his status to voluntarily missing without reason.
Yeah, but like he should have his total new identification, so.
But he could. Maybe he has. It's very tricky. But no, who knows?
But what's when Mike and Karen kick the bucket? That should Bryce be running back? That's my inheritance.
I don't know. Who knows? But we would love to know your input. Let us know in the comments, and we shall see you very shortly with another episode.
Bye.
Thanks, bye!